Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight we're heading west, deep into the shadows of California, where the sun may shine but the darkness never really goes away. From cursed ghost towns and haunted highways to whispering forests and mirrors that remember too much, these are 10 disturbing true California horror stories, each one stranger, scarier, and more unsettling than the last. But before we begin, here's something weird. Most viewers make a chilling mistake. They leave without hitting subscribe. And when they do, they miss out on the creepiest stories we've ever told. The kind of stories that don't just keep you up at night, they follow you into your dreams. So don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because tonight, we open the door to a part of California that's rarely seen. And once you look in, something might look back. Now tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it there? Drop it in the comments. I want to know who's brave enough to watch in the dead of night, because here at Creepy Vibes, the darkness is always listening. Now, let's dive into the terror. Harold Dunn never liked silence. Not when he was young, and especially not now, not after 67 years of chasing noise to keep the ghosts out. Silence meant stillness, and stillness let the past creep in. That's what the sea taught him. He'd spent 4 decades battling it, first as a crabber out of Half Moon Bay, then a bait runner, then anything that kept him working on the water and not in his head. The ocean didn't let a man think too long. It roared and spat and shoved. That was how Harold liked it, loud and alive. Then Maggie died, and the sea went quiet. 3 weeks after her funeral, he walked out to the cliffs near Devil's Slide. That stretch of Highway 1 had been shut down years back, landslides and ghost stories mostly, but Harold knew the old fisherman's path. It wound along the rocks just above the crash line, close enough to feel the spray on your boots. He didn't go there to die, not really. He went to remember, or forget, maybe both. And that's when he heard her voice. At first he thought it was the wind. But wind didn't say his name like that, didn't whisper Harry like it used to when she wanted him to come in for supper. It came soft, carried in the fog rolling in off the Pacific, thick and wet and cold enough to seep into his bones. "Harry, come home." He froze, stood there until the tide pulled back and slammed in again. He didn't tell anyone, not his daughter, not his priest. It was grief, he figured. Just grief, nothing more. But it kept happening. Every time the fog came in heavy, he'd walk that path, and the voice would come again, sometimes distant like it was calling from down in the surf, other times right behind him. She said his name, always his name. Then things only she would know. Little things, private things. She once sang the first verse of their wedding song, and he dropped to his knees and wept into the rocks. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in Maggie. And Maggie was talking to him. He started going out every evening. Same path, same routine. Neighbors stopped inviting him to the Legion bar. His daughter Linda started calling more often. He told her he was fine. He told her he was walking for his heart. That part wasn't a lie. One night, the fog came in earlier than usual. Thicker, too. It wasn't the kind that drifted in all, lazy and poetic. This stuff slammed into the cliffs like it had a purpose, like it wanted something. Harold brought his lantern and an old yellow slicker that still smelled like diesel and seaweed. He walked out further than he ever had. The rocks were slick and black with moss, the wind howling low like something alive. The waves below sounded wrong. Closer somehow, louder, like they were climbing up the cliff face. He heard her before he saw her. "Harry, come home. I miss you." It was clearer this time. Too clear. Not memory. Not grief. A voice. Her voice. And it wasn't coming from the wind. It was coming from the fog itself. The shape of it started to shift around him, curl in strange ways, like it had bones underneath. He turned and saw her. At least he thought it was her. She stood maybe 10 yards away, right at the edge of the path where the cliff dropped into the sea. She wore the same blue dress she was buried in. Her hair was moving, but there was no wind. Her eyes were wrong. Not glowing, not demonic. Just empty. Holes where memory should be. She smiled. Not the way Maggie smiled, but close enough to make his heart hurt. He stepped toward her. She stepped back. Closer to the edge. "Come home," she whispered. Something in him broke. He ran, as best an old man can run. Slipped once, caught himself. Got close enough to touch her. But when he reached out, his hand passed through her, like smoke. The fog behind her split open like a curtain, revealing nothing but black ocean beyond. He didn't stop himself in time. He nearly went over. He collapsed on the ground, heart hammering in his chest. She was gone. When he got home, his boots were soaked, and there were deep red cuts across his palms. The kind you get when you grab jagged rock. He didn't remember falling that hard. He tried to stay away after that. Really tried. But she kept calling. Some nights he'd wake up screaming. Other nights he'd hear her humming in the backyard, even though the back gate was chained shut. He stopped answering Linda's calls, started drinking again. The sea was louder now. Even in town, the waves crashing against the cliffs echoed in his ears day and night. One afternoon, Linda came to check on him and found the house empty. The bed made, the coffee still warm. His slicker was gone. They found his lantern 2 days later, flickering, weakly on the rocks near Devil's Slide. The path was slick with fresh prints. Only one set. No body was ever recovered. Some say he finally followed her all the way. Others say he slipped, just another old man lost to the cliffs. But fishermen still talk about the fog down by Devil's Slide. On certain nights when it rolls, in Too Fast and Too Thick, you can hear them both calling to each other from the rocks. Harry, Maggie, then silence. Always silence. And that's when the waves get louder. He only meant to stay one night. The guy's name was Cole Randall. 42, white, sun-baked and bone-tired. A real American drifter. Military boots, dirty rucksack, and the kind of stare that didn't stick to people too long. He hadn't called anyone friend in years, hadn't had a hot shower in weeks, and hadn't prayed in decades. But that changed the minute he walked into the Cecil. He hadn't heard about Elisa Lam. Didn't read the papers, didn't watch the news. When the desk clerk slid over the key to room 506, there were no warnings. No tremble in the voice. Just a bored glance and checkouts at 11, no refunds. The elevator groaned on the way up. The kind of groan a building makes when it's sick of being alive. The Cecil had that look about it. Old skin stretched too tight over something rotten underneath. It was a place that had swallowed people. Not in a poetic sense, not metaphorically. It had devoured them. Cole didn't know all that. Not yet. Room 506 smelled like mildew, bleach, and old cigarettes. It had the kind of wallpaper that looked diseased, curling like burnt flesh at the corners. The bedspread had stains, some brown, some darker. The radiator clanked all night like it was choking on bones. But he didn't care. He'd slept in worse. The trouble started around 2:13 a.m. That's when he got up to piss and caught something in the hallway mirror outside the bathroom. It was just a flash at first, a shimmer, but enough to stop him mid-step. He stared, tilted his head, rubbed his eyes. It wasn't his reflection looking back. Same clothes, yeah. Same height, same eyes. But the face, something was wrong with. Dursa, the mouth was slightly too wide, like someone had tugged at both corners with fishhooks. And the eyes, his eyes, had no whites. Just milky, pale gray, like soap left too long in water. He blinked. The mirror blinked back wrong, half a second too slow. He backed away. By morning it was gone. Normal reflection. Maybe it had been a dream, or a trick of the old glass. He packed his things, went to the desk, and tried to check out. No refunds. The clerk repeated without looking up. Same guy, same dead voice. I just want to leave, Cole said. The clerk smiled. Barely. You already checked in? What the hell does that mean? But the guy just turned and walked into the office behind the counter. Cole left anyway. Or tried to. But every street he turned onto looked the same. Empty. Smog thick. Time didn't move right. The sun hung low and orange, like it had been nailed, there. The people, what few he saw, didn't make eye contact. Didn't move right. They walked like they were waiting for something. Or someone. After a few hours, he ended up back at the Cecil. It was like the city was folding in on itself, like it wanted him back. He stood outside the lobby for a long time, staring through the dusty glass doors. Inside, the same clerk sat at the same desk, the exact same position. He didn't remember walking back in, but he found himself in the elevator again. Same groaning, same flickering lights. Room 506 waited like a mouth. The mirror didn't lie. That night, his reflection spoke to him. Don't run, it said in his own voice. Then it smiled. That too-wide grin again, stretching so far it split the skin at the corners. Blood, his blood, dripped down the glass. He touched his mouth. It was dry, no cuts, no pain. But in the mirror, he was bleeding. When he smashed the glass, it didn't shatter. It rippled like water, like skin, then it pulled him forward, not physically. Not yet. But Cole felt something hook into his gut. Like the mirror had tasted him, and wanted more. He didn't sleep that night, just sat in the bed, eyes on the mirror. It didn't show anything anymore, just an empty hallway behind him. But every now and then something passed through it, fast, too fast to catch. Like the ghosts of the people who died here, the girl in the elevator, the man with the hammer, the baby in the water tank. By the fourth night, his eyes were black-ringed and wild. He'd stopped eating. Couldn't remember if he'd spoken aloud all day. He tried to write a note just in case. Just in case what? He didn't know, but the pen wouldn't work. The paper was wet, always wet. He started seeing them in the mirror all the time. Faces, dozens, none of them his. They looked out, begging, then grinning, then screaming. The last night, he tried to leave again. He got as far as the lobby. Then something caught his eye, his reflection in the polished brass of the front door. It was waiting. This time, the thing in the reflection wasn't pretending anymore. It looked like him, but it moved like a puppet. Bent arms, twitching head. A mouth that opened too wide and didn't stop. Teeth that never ended. It waved. Cole turned and ran up the stairs. They found room 506 2 days later. Empty. The bed untouched, the sink running, and the mirror cracked dead center. No sign of Cole. No fingerprints, no name in the registry. But the clerk swore he saw someone come in. Tall. Pale. Eyes like wet paper. And now? Guests still say they see him in the hallway mirror. Just for a second. A man with his face peeled too tight, like it's being stretched from the inside. His mouth always moving. Always screaming something no one can hear. They say if you stay on the 5th floor and walk past the mirror after midnight, he watches you. And if your reflection blinks late, run. You know how some places feel wrong before anything even happens, like the trees are holding their breath waiting? That's what Black Star Canyon is. Always has been. The locals say it was cursed long before Spanish boots ever touched that soil. A place where screams echo and never come back the same. Some folks even say the land remembers every drop of blood spilled on it. In October 2019, 5 friends hiked up the canyon trail and only one came back. His name was Aaron Meadows, 26, quiet, the kind of guy who didn't get invited to things much. He was tagging along with his more outgoing college buddies, Tommy, Daryl, Lindsay, and Mateo. It was supposed to be a night hike, one of those spook runs where you try to scare each other with urban legends and then drink warm beer by a rock. Outcrop. They brought flashlights, a Bluetooth speaker, and a bottle of Fireball. What they didn't bring was respect, because the signs were there. Literally, do not enter after dusk. No trespassing, serious risk of injury or death. And the most telling, if you hear whistling, do not respond. They laughed, took selfies by the signs, said stuff like, "The only thing cursed in this canyon is your playlist, Tommy." They never made it past the falls. Authorities only found Aaron the next morning, curled in the dry creek bed, knees drawn up, eyes wide open and glassy. His lips were chapped and torn, but not from screaming, because Aaron wouldn't scream. He couldn't. He could only whistle. At first, people thought it was shock, a trauma response. He'd whistle soft, breathy notes, tuneless at first. Then, patterns started forming, melodies, but they weren't joyful. They were wrong, off rhythm. Like nursery rhymes stretched too thin and twisted backward. When the cops tried to ask him what happened, he whistled a low, shaky tune that made one of the deputies start crying. And not quiet tears either. Big, choking sobs from a grown man who didn't understand why his chest felt like it was being carved open. Medical professionals tried everything: CT scans, neurological exams. He was physically fine, vocal cords intact. But Aaron couldn't speak. He'd sit in his hospital bed and whistle to the walls. Some nights the nurses swore the shadows near his room moved different. That cold would pour under the door like fog, and then slither away when someone turned on the lights. A week after his admittance, security footage caught him standing in the hallway at 3:11 a.m., barefoot and smiling. He whistled something, 3 slow notes, high, low, high, and every hallway light flickered out at once, then came back on. He was gone. They found him outside, standing in the rain at the edge of a culvert, still whistling. Here's what little anyone could piece together. Tommy had dared them to hike past the old mining equipment, said he'd read about a collapsed shaft haunted by miners and native spirits. Daryl was filming it all. Content, he called it. But his phone was later found shattered, the SD card missing like it had been cut out. Lindsay was the first to mention the whistling, said it was close but no one was there, just trees. Old trees gnarled like hands gripping at the sky. Then they heard it again, behind them this time. A 3-note whistle. Mateo whistled back. Because of course he did. That was the mistake. The thing in the canyon doesn't like being mocked. It doesn't like being answered. They were never seen again. Aaron's clothes had rips but no blood. His feet were scratched raw like he'd run for miles barefoot. And his eyes, they stayed glassy, like something was still watching through them. He was committed to a long-term care facility in Riverside. Then came the others. A nurse went missing during a late-night round. They found her shoes by the locked window in Aaron's room. One still tied, one overturned like it had been yanked off in a rush. Aaron was still in his bed, smiling, whistling. That night, the facility had a blackout. Every patient began humming, the same 3 notes over and over. They eventually stopped trying to treat him, just kept him isolated. Heavy sedation, earplugs for the staff. But even under drugs, Aaron whistled in his sleep. People started to believe the thing that came back wasn't really Aaron anymore. That whatever was inside that canyon, it took his voice and gave him a different one. Some researchers, fringe types, believe it's an old spirit, maybe older than language, some kind of forgotten watcher. Native elders warned about it centuries ago, a being that lives in sound, in vibration, in the space between the echoes. They said it hates being acknowledged. It hates being followed. It whistles to call you closer, and if you answer, you become one of its mouths. As of now, Aaron Meadows is still alive, still whistling. They say if you hike Black Star Canyon and hear it, those 3 cold notes, you need to leave immediately. Don't look around, don't stop, don't answer, because if you do, it learns your tune. And once it knows your song, you'll never speak again, you'll only whistle. There was a time when Bombay Beach had dreams. You can still see the bones of them if you look hard enough. Faded motel signs, sun-bleached trailers half swallowed by sand, and the ghost shells of boats stranded in salt. The air stinks of rot and gasoline. The water's worse, thick as syrup in places, boils with algae and dead fish. People used to come here to vacation. Now they come to forget, to hide, or to go crazy in peace. That's why Nathan Gall came. He wasn't always a failed artist. Once, in some past life, critics at CalArts called him the next Goya for the apocalypse generation. But somewhere along the way, he slipped. Maybe it was the divorce. Maybe it was the bad acid at the gallery opening in Portland. Maybe it was just the weight of trying to turn pain into paint for too long. He bought the trailer off Craigslist for $4,200 cash. It had no AC and no plumbing. The man who sold it to him warned him to watch the lake on full moons. Nathan thought it was a joke. The first night was mostly quiet. Dust and creaking metal. Wind that sounded like whispering. He didn't sleep much. Woke up sweating and swore he heard footsteps crunching outside. But when he looked, there was nothing. Just miles of decay and chemical shimmer. The next morning he started painting, and it came easy. Easier than it had in years. He smeared oils on cracked canvas with frantic speed, like something inside him had just unclogged. But the work was off. All he painted were eyes. Eyes in walls. Eyes under murky water. Eyes watching from cracked mirrors. He tried to paint a figure. The brush turned it into a tangled mass of wet eyes and no mouth. He told himself it was symbolic. A metaphor for his anxiety, for the surveillance state, for trauma. Artists lie to themselves like that. By the third day, his trailer was full of them. Dozens of canvases, all staring, all different. Some with lids peeled back, some crying. Some just wide open. He painted through the nights, barely eating, couldn't stop. Not even when he wanted to. It wasn't inspiration. It was compulsion. He started seeing them even when he closed his eyes. Bright ones behind his lids. Green, yellow, bloodshot. One night he woke up with his own fingernails digging into his cheeks, whispering something in a language he didn't know. The dog came on the fifth day. It wandered in from the shoreline, if you can call that sludge a shore. No tags. One eye missing. It wouldn't bark. Just stood there and stared at him with its one good eye like it was trying to warn him. That night the paintings blinked, just once. He thought it was a trick of the heat. His trailer was over 100 degrees by midnight, no power. He'd been drinking paint thinner again. But he swore the big eye on the far wall, blue iris, a glint of moonlight, blinked. He threw the painting outside. By morning, it was back inside, hung neatly where it had been. And the dog was gone. Just a puddle of blood and fur, like it had melted. Nathan tried to leave then. Packed his car and drove 3 miles before the engine exploded into a column of smoke. His phone screen cracked without warning. His backup canvases had turned a blank bone white in the back seat. That's when he started hearing them. Not voices, just breathing, wet and hungry. Sometimes whispering in the vents, sometimes scratching under the trailer. He taped up all the windows and stopped painting, but his hands wouldn't stop twitching. He'd catch himself doodling eyeballs in the dust on the windowsill, on his arm. Once he found one carved into the mirror, and then came the night of the full moon. The wind stopped, the rot-smelling air went dead still, and from the edge of the sea, something started rising. It wasn't a wave, it wasn't human. It wasn't right. It looked like the sand and salt were parting for it, pulling back like skin peeled from a wound. He stepped outside barefoot, the crunch of fish bones underfoot sharp and slicing, and out there something looked at him. He never saw the whole shape, just movement, writhing, coiling, like it had too many joints. Its skin reflected moonlight like wet latex. Its eyes, thousands of them, blinking in chaotic rhythms, some too fast, some too slow, like it was learning how to see him. learning his shape, his smell. He tried to scream, but the air turned thick and hot in his throat, like he was inhaling syrup. And in the silence, he heard it, not a growl or a roar, but a sigh, and it sounded disappointed. The next morning, a tourist couple found his trailer door open. No Nathan, just paintings, hundreds now. Eyes from floor to ceiling. Even the floor was painted with them. There was a final canvas sitting in the center of the room, facing the door. It was Nathan, nude, curled and small like a fetus, and every inch of his painted body was covered in eyes. They say if you go to that trailer now and it's still there, you'll hear breathing when you stand still too long. You'll feel watched even when you're alone. And if you look long enough at the water, you might see them ripple below the surface. The eyes, waiting, hungry after all. Nathan wasn't the first. He was just the one who saw it clear enough to paint it, and sometimes that's all it takes, a little clarity, a little madness, and something beneath the sea that sees you too. The first thing you should know about Preston Castle is this: the cold never leaves. Doesn't matter if it's July and your shirt sticks to your back with sweat, or if you stand outside in the blistering Central Valley sun, it's always cold inside the castle. The kind that settles in your bones and stays like guilt. Tom Greeley hadn't been back in almost 20 years. He told himself it was for closure, that it was time his son Dean saw the place where his old man used to work, back when Tom was a correctional officer and the castle was a juvenile facility, not some rotting museum with ghost tours and YouTube channels sniffing around. But deep down, Tom knew why he was really there. It was about the cold room and the boy who died in it. They said his name was Elmer. Froze to death one night in 1919 when the castle's boiler broke down. The staff forgot he was down there. Forgot, or pretended to. Depending on who you asked, he was a problem child. Violent, uncontrollable. So they threw him in the isolation cell in the old laundry wing. No windows, no blankets, just bricks and shadows and air cold enough to make your teeth chatter. By the time they found him, his fingers were snapped off at the knuckles, trying to claw through the frozen stone. The story was always passed around, like campfire fuel by the guards. Don't stay late. Don't go down there after dark. Don't whistle near the laundry chute. He hates that. Most didn't believe it. Tom never said if he did. But something had happened to him down there in 1986, something he never talked about. Dean was 15, same age as Elmer when he died. He wasn't thrilled to spend a Saturday exploring his dad's haunted past, but he came along. He loved his dad, even if he didn't understand him. And Tom, for all his years, was trying to get it right now. Trying to be the kind of father he hadn't been before the drinking, before the discharge, before the nightmares that made him wake up clawing at his own throat. The front door creaked open like it had a grudge. The castle hadn't aged well. Peeling paint, smashed windows, graffiti in the shape of pentagrams and cartoon dicks. But it still stood. That ugly old Romanesque brick mass, defiant against time. The inside smelled like mildew and rusted dreams. The kind of place that remembers suffering. Why does it feel colder in here than it does outside? Dean asked, arms hugging himself. Tom didn't answer. Just led him down past the chapel, past the old classrooms with shattered desks, into the belly of the castle. Deeper than the ghost tours go. Deeper than most people even knew existed. His boots echoed on the cracked stone. Dean's flashlight flicked over rusted pipes and graffiti scrawled in blood-colored spray paint. One said, "He's still here," and then they reached it. The cold room. A squat little square of bricks and metal, bare floor, iron door that screeched when Tom opened it. No light, no heat. Just that creeping cold, like the room was sucking warmth from their lungs. Tom stood in the doorway staring inside. This is where they left him. Dean peeked in. Doesn't look like much. He screamed for 2 nights straight. The guard said it sounded like he was chewing glass by the end. When they opened the door, his lips were gone. He'd bitten them off. Jesus, Dad. Tom stepped inside. The light caught his face, creased and waxy and hollow-eyed. I saw him. Back in '86. Right here. I got locked in overnight. Boiler went out again. Whole wing was cold. Thought it was hazing. Then I heard the crying. Dean didn't follow. Tom looked back. You coming in or not? Dean hesitated, then stepped over the threshold. That's when the door slammed shut behind him. Pitch black. No, hey. What the hell? He spun. Dad? No answer. He flicked his flashlight. The beam was weak, flickering. He swung it toward the door. Nothing. Just brick. The handle was gone. There was no handle. Dad? The flashlight stuttered again, and this time the beam caught something in the corner. A shape. Small. Barefoot. Thin arms wrapped around its knees. Pale skin that looked frostbitten even in the dim light, and eyes. So many eyes. More than any boy should have. They blinked, slow and wet, one after another, blinking from his cheeks, his neck, even one in his palm. Dean froze. The flashlight hit the ground and rolled spinning shadows across the wall like a zoetrope from hell. The boy opened his mouth, but the sound wasn't crying. It was breathing. A thick, cold fog poured from his mouth like smoke from a dying fire, and from the corner of the room a whisper slithered out. You brought him back. Dean tried to back away, but the walls were closer than they had been. The room was smaller now, tighter. The cold bit into his skin, into his teeth. In the dark, something grabbed his wrist. Not hard, gentle, like a child begging for help. And then he saw the eyes weren't looking at him. They were looking past him. Dean turned. His father stood behind him, eyes wet, breath fogging. I never got out, Tom said. I thought I did, but I didn't. He kept me here, and now. He reached out, and as Dean screamed, the light vanished. They found Dean 2 weeks later, curled in the corner of the cold room, whispering things to himself that no one could understand. His lips were cracked and blue. His fingers bled from clawing at the bricks. He never spoke again. But every now and then, in the dead of night, guards say they hear him whistling. And if you go down there, if you're stupid or brave enough to enter that cold, forgotten place, don't answer the whistle, no matter how familiar it sounds, because whatever's in that room, it remembers your name, and it waits. You ever stare into a mirror so long that your own face starts to feel like a stranger's? That's what hit Casey Miller the moment they crept into Body. It started as a thrill ride, just a dumb midnight adventure with her family, husband, Rick, their daughter June, and their son Tyler, who had just turned 17 and acted like he knew everything about ghosts, history, and urban legends. Casey had her doubts. Not about the ghost town itself. Body was real, tucked up in the eastern Sierra Nevada like some dead thing fossilized in wind and silence. But about the curse. The so-called Body curse. The one park rangers liked to whisper about when the cameras weren't rolling. They said anyone who took something from the town, anything, even a nail, would be punished. Rick had laughed it off. He always laughed things off. You really believe in that spooky shit? He said, stomping across the old boardwalk outside the barbershop. It's just a story to keep tourists from stealing souvenirs. Tyler had read the same story online. People send stuff back in the mail, though, like rocks, glass bottles, even old tools. Said they saw things, lost jobs, got cancer. Rick smirked. Guess karma has a good postal service. They got in through a gap in the fence. Midnight. No wind, no sounds. Just their 4 flashlights cutting through the thick darkness like knives through tar. The whole town looked embalmed. Wooden buildings slumping, windows long broken. Everything gray and quiet like it had exhaled and died 100 years ago. Casey's flashlight flickered over the old schoolhouse, the rusted swings, and then stopped. On a cracked mirror in the collapsed doorway of what used to be a brothel, the glass was so warped it almost looked like it was breathing. June ran her fingers across it, giggling. It's like funhouse glass. It's just old, Rick said. It distorts stuff. Tyler picked up a square nail from the ground and slipped it in his hoodie pocket. Casey noticed. "You better not take that," she said. "What's it gonna do, Mom? Make my grades drop?" He didn't laugh. No one did. The town didn't like laughter. It swallowed it, turned it into echoes that didn't sound quite right. They made camp inside one of the cabins. Rick set down a cooler of beers. Casey spread out sleeping bags. The kids climbed into theirs, dozing off fast. But Casey stayed up, staring into the cracked glass propped in the corner. The mirror was older than any of them. Older than the wars, older than the town itself. The kind of old that remembers, and for a second, just one awful second, her reflection blinked before she did. The next morning, something was wrong. June's eyes were too dark. Tyler's jaw had narrowed, nose longer. Rick, God help her, Rick wasn't Rick anymore. Not exactly. "You feeling okay?" she asked, pouring stale coffee from the thermos. Rick blinked at her, slow. Too slow. "Why? You look different." He gave a thin smile, one she didn't recognize. "Do I?" That was when she realized his wedding ring was on the wrong hand. Tyler stared into the mirror outside like he'd been hypnotized. June just whispered to herself, "It's not me. It's not me. It's not me," over and over. That was when the cold came. Not wind, not weather. Cold like absence, like someone had vacuumed the life out of the room and left something else behind. Casey backed toward the door. "I think we should leave. Now." Rick didn't move. "Too late. They've already warned us." She stopped. "What?" "They were waiting," he said, voice dry as sand, "for someone to fit." And then June turned. Her face was no longer her face. It was a sunken gray thing. Hollow eyes, mouth hanging wrong, like it didn't know how to smile anymore. Her reflection still looked like her, but the real June, the flesh one in front of Casey, was becoming something else. "They're not mirrors," Tyler whispered, voice trembling. "They're doors." She grabbed her kids, tried to pull them outside, but the town had shifted. The buildings weren't where they had been. The saloon was suddenly where the church used to be, and the street sloped down now, into a valley that hadn't been there the night before. They were still in Bodie, but it wasn't this Bodie. It was the other one, the one under the dust. The one made of memories and regret and faces that don't belong to anyone anymore. She looked down and saw her own hands. They were too pale, wrinkled in places she hadn't aged yet. The gold ring on her finger was rusted, now bent. She ran to the mirror. Her reflection was still her, but it was crying, and it mouthed, "Get out." The glass cracked on its own. Casey reached toward it, desperate to pull her real self through, but Rick caught her wrist. Only it wasn't Rick anymore, just someone wearing his shape, like a thrift store coat. "You broke it," he said, voice wet with something that sounded like rot. "You should have left it alone." She didn't scream. She didn't even breathe, because in that moment, she saw it, saw what the curse really was. It wasn't just punishment for stealing things, it was about identity. You take something from body, and body takes something back. Your name, your face, your soul, one piece at a time. They say rangers still find things at the edge of town. Socks, cameras, sometimes a child's hoodie stuffed with square nails, sometimes even an old hand mirror with cracks running like veins across its surface. But no one's found the Millers. Not really, though. Now and then, a family shows up on the ghost tours. They don't say much, don't blink much either. But if you look real close, you might see something in their eyes, something shifting, like they're still trying to remember who they were. And the mirrors? They won't help you. They only show you what you used to be. It started like they all start. Bored teenagers, a half tank of gas, and a dare passed around like a joint. Jake made the first move, tapping the steering wheel of his dad's truck with one hand and nursing a Red Bull with the other. It was late September, the night hot and bone dry, and the lights of San Jose looked like stars had sunk into the valley instead of the sky. "You guys ever heard about Hicks Road?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Maya rolled her eyes. "You mean the place with the satanic albino cult?" Derek laughed from the back seat. "Don't forget the goats. They sacrifice goats out there, big part of the legend." Amber, sitting shotgun, hugged her arms tight across her chest. "My cousin said they chased his friend's car in the middle of the night, smashed the headlights with a chain." "Yeah," Jake grinned. "And then dragged him off screaming, right?" Derek leaned forward between the seats. "All I know is the cops won't go up there after dark, and there's no cell reception. Ever." That sealed it. By 11:17 p.m., they were past Camden Avenue, tires whispering over the cracked asphalt of Hicks Road, swallowed on both sides by thick oak trees and brush so dense it looked like the woods had teeth. The road narrowed the deeper they went, winding like a snake's spine. No streetlights, just blackness and moonlight. And quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel natural. The kind that's waiting. "I don't like this," Amber muttered, pulling her hoodie tighter. Jake turned down the music. Something about the silence demanded respect. "There's supposed to be a fence," Maya said. "That's where the compound is, where they live." "They?" "The cult. The albinos. Whatever they are." Jake scoffed, but slower now. Even he could feel it. The road was changing. Not just the curves, but the air. It smelled wrong. Not rotting. Not metallic. Just old. The trees leaned in tighter, branches bare, even though it wasn't fall. Their shadows moved even when the truck didn't. They reached the bend near the old quarry. That's when they saw the goat. It stood in the middle of the road, still as stone, head cocked. Its eyes reflected the headlights, not yellow like an animal's. White, glowing white. Jake slammed the brakes. The truck jolted, tires shrieking. The goat didn't flinch. Then it turned and walked off the road, slow and deliberate, vanishing into the brush. "Follow it," Derek whispered. "The hell I will," Jake said, but his foot was already on the gas. They crept forward. The goat reappeared near a trail, just standing there like a signpost from some nightmare Bible story. Then it bolted. Jake followed. The truck's tires ground over rocks and dirt, bouncing through the narrow path until they came to a rusted gate, bent in the middle like something massive had pushed through it years ago. Beyond it, shacks, dozens of them, sunken, rotted buildings, a church without a roof, a barn with bones piled beside it, and a massive wooden totem in the center of the clearing carved with faces twisted in agony. Not human faces. Not anymore. Amber screamed. A figure stepped out of the barn. Naked, pale, skin like raw dough, stretched tight, eyes white as paper. No hair, no eyebrows. It didn't walk. It glided. Then another, and another. They emerged from the shadows like they'd been there all along, waiting beneath the soil and stones and scrub. Jake hit reverse, tires spinning in the dirt, but the truck didn't move. Something was behind it. They turned. A massive figure, over 7 feet tall, eyes hidden beneath a burlap hood, holding a hammer the size of a cinder block. "No license plates," the thing rasped. "You brought no offering." "What?" Jake whispered, paralyzed. "No goats," it hissed. "No blood. No trade." The pale people began to circle, smiling now. Their teeth weren't human. "You heard the stories," the hooded one said. "And still you came. The harvest calls to unbelievers." A shriek tore from Amber's throat as she tried to climb out the window. A pale hand caught her ankle and dragged her halfway out. Bones cracked. Jake reached under the seat and grabbed the tire iron, swinging wildly. He hit something, heard wet crunching, but it didn't stop. "They don't die like us." Maya grabbed the keys and twisted. Nothing. Jake turned to look for the goat. It was standing on the totem now, watching. Its eyes weren't glowing anymore. They were burning. Then everything went white. Not like an explosion, like being swallowed. When he woke, it was daylight. He was alone. The truck was gone. So were his friends. The road was clean, no tracks, no blood. Just him and the sound of birds and the distant whine of morning traffic. Jake walked for miles until he found a gas station. Called his mom. Told the police everything. They never found a body or the compound. Just woods. Empty, dry, and quiet. Month later, he started sleepwalking. Woke up in the backyard. Dirt under his fingernails. Mouth full of something metallic. He started carving shapes in the drywall. Totems. Pale faces. Then one morning, he looked in the mirror. His eyebrows were gone. The skin on his arms had gone pale, chalk white. And he hadn't been out of the house in days. He tried to scream but couldn't. His throat had sealed while he slept. Some nights on Hicks Road, people still say they see lights. Not headlights. Torches. And a white goat standing still, in the middle of the road like it's waiting for the next unbeliever. Because the harvest never ends. Not in San Jose. Not in Bodie. Not anywhere they've already taken root. The first thing they found was the phone. Face down in a clump of dried grass off Mulholland Trail, about 30 feet behind the Hollywood sign's towering white H. The second thing they found was the skin. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Her name was Katie Mallard, 25, blonde with extensions, lips plumped out like gummy worms, eyes always squinting with the strain of that influencer smile. If you lived in LA in 2023 and owned a phone, you probably knew her face. She'd built a following on wellness hacks, hiking guides, and something she called Desert Soul Detoxes. Her whole brand was sunrises and sage bundles, sports, bras, and affirmations. The hike was supposed to be a sunrise stream, a cute little wander to the sign with her new GoPro and a can of branded lemon water tucked in her side pouch. Rising and grinding with y'all from the top of the world. She'd posted the night before with a bikini selfie captioned, "Manifesting magic, let's get weird." She went up alone. That was her first mistake. She went live at 5:42 a.m. It was still dark. The city was a sea of orange pinpoints far below. The air was that early morning kind of quiet. Nothing but wind and the buzz of your own thoughts. At 5:49, the stream started glitching. Not buffering, not lag. Glitching. The kind of skipping that makes faces blur sideways and voices warble like old cassette tapes. Katie's face twisted in the frame. Her voice sounded like it was underwater, but she was smiling, laughing. "Okay," she said. "So I'm like behind the letters now and it's giving don't go here energy. Super creepy. I love it." Then the screen turned black. But the audio kept rolling, crunching footsteps. A gasp. A wet, slithery sound like something dragging through dirt and gravel. And then metal. Screeching. Like something was inside the hollow letters. Then came a new sound. Quiet. Barely audible. But unmistakable. A breath not hers. Something was breathing. Long inhales. Wet exhales. At 5:53 a.m., the live stream cut off. Her followers thought it was a gimmick. One of her viral, immersive thriller stunts. She'd done one before. Locked herself in a sensory deprivation tank and streamed the whole thing. Got 2.3 million views. But this time she didn't come back. By 9 a.m., her agent was panicking. By 2 p.m., the police were combing the hillside. By sunset, they found the phone. Still recording, battery drained, and next to it, in a crumpled pile behind the L, a piece of skin, not torn. Shed. Like a snake's molt. Only it was the exact color of human flesh. Pores. Freckles. A faint birthmark in the shape of a heart on the lower back. And it was whole. From neck to heel. Like Katie had slipped out of herself. They ran DNA. It matched. There was no blood, no bones, no clothes, just the phone and the skin. And behind the letters carved into the rusted steel beams, deep gouges like talons had raked the inside. The LAPD closed the case in a week. No signs of foul play, but her followers never let it go. A Redditor named Unneon Pariah got hold of a backup copy of the live stream. claimed he cleaned the audio and boosted the low-end frequencies. What he found still makes its rounds in the dark corners of the web. After Katie laughs near the letters, just before the stream cuts out, if you crank the volume you hear something behind her say, "She's beautiful." It's not her voice, not human. More like something pretending to be human. More like a child's drawing of a voice, if that makes sense. And right before the blackout, there's one frame, just one, that shows something behind the top arch of the D. It's only visible for a fraction of a second, but if you pause it, you see a shape. Long, pale, boneless, with eyes. Not two, not even four. Dozens. Like a colony of spiders had learned to wear a person's face. And the worst part? The angle of the frame. It's looking down at Katie, which means it wasn't her phone that caught it. Something else was holding the camera. Some say it's the ghost of Peg Entwistle, the actress who jumped from the sign in 1932. They say the grief warped her soul, turned her into something vengeful, something hungry. But the old locals, the real old ones, the ones who remember what this land was before it became Hollywood, they whisper a different theory, that the sign is more than letters, that it's a seal, a prison, and that when people climb behind, they're not just trespassing on city property, they're knocking on the door, and sometimes it answers. It was the trees that took him. That's what Delia Wexler said, and she never once changed her story. Not to the sheriff, not to the company, not even when they threatened to haul her off to the nut house in Eureka. She just sat there on the front porch of that sagging cedar cabin outside Petrolia, wrapped in her dead husband's flannel coat, eyes black as a burnt-out stump, and said it plain. The woods didn't want him in there, so they took him back. Her husband's name was Reuben Wexler, 46, third-generation logger, worked for North Valley Timber out of Fortuna. He was a big man, the kind who could carry a chainsaw like a handbag and still roll his own smokes with those scarred-up fingers. People liked him. He wasn't soft, but he wasn't cruel either, not like some of the other boys in that crew. And he loved those trees. Said it himself. Not in the hippy-dippy way. Reuben wasn't the type to hug a sequoia, but with the quiet kind of reverence a man shows a mountain or a grave. "This forest is older than sin," he once told his son Joey. "You don't cut into it like you're God with a blade." Delia heard that and smiled. She always said Reuben was born in the wrong time. Should have been a preacher or a poet, not a man who wore Kevlar chaps and dodged widowmakers for a living. The trouble started when North Valley Timber bought a new tract of untouched land east of Honeydew, a pocket of deep wet woods known to the old-timers as Widow's Hollow. The trees there weren't just big, they were prehistoric. Some of them shot up over 350 feet, redwoods so thick around you couldn't wrap a pickup truck around the base. Nobody had ever touched them. Not even the mills back in the clear-cut crazy 50s. The company men said it was because the land was unstable, too steep, too risky. But the loggers had a different story. They said something lived out there, not bears, not cougars. Something with fingers, something that watched from the canopy and spoke in the groan of bark and root. Delia swore she heard it first. It was late September, the night fog rolling in thick as milk over the hills. She just laid down. In bed, Reuben still out on the porch having his bedtime smoke. She heard a whisper, thin, sharp, like someone dragging a nail across her window screen. When she looked outside, there was nothing but trees. 1,000 vertical graves rising into the mist. The air smelled sweet and damp like pine pitch and rot. She tried to call for Reuben, but her throat locked up. Her legs too, like something was pressing down on her chest. The next thing she remembered, it was morning and the coffee pot was half full and Reuben's boots were gone. That was the last time she saw him. They never found the body, not even a piece, but they did find his saw, bent in half like a soda can, and the tree he'd been cutting. It was bleeding, thick dark sap leaking from a crack in the trunk that ran like a smile too wide, and embedded deep inside that crack, a wedding ring, Reuben's, still warm when they pulled it out. The foreman shut down the tract for a week, called it a safety pause. But by the time they reopened it, 3 more men were missing. No blood, no prints, just torn harnesses and silence. One guy named Gordo Jensen came back, only one, but he wasn't right after. Wouldn't talk, wouldn't eat, just sat in his trailer up in Wyatt whittling little wooden faces out of driftwood. All of them had their mouths sewn shut with fishing line. One night, Gordo walked into the redwoods barefoot and vanished. All he left behind was a note, scrawled on the back of a paper napkin in dull graphite. She sings in the canopy. The roots are her fingers. I saw her face in the grain. The company blamed exhaustion. Delia blamed something else. Widow took him, she told the new sheriff, this 26-year-old hotshot from Arcata, who'd never spent a single night in the woods alone. You think it's just dirt and trees out there, but those woods are older than your badge, older than your God. People laughed, said she cracked, said grief rotted her mind. But then the dream started. Folks up and down the Lost Coast said they heard crying from the trees, like a woman, wailing low. Not human exactly, more like a cello string being bowed too slow, and people started finding things in their yards. Bundles of hair wrapped in moss, teeth and bark. That looked a hell of a lot like skin. One kid hiking near Widow's Hollow filmed something on his phone. It was taken down within 24 hours, but some say they downloaded it first, passed it around like a campfire story. In the clip, there's a tree with a hole in the middle, like a knothole but wide, round, wet-looking, and just before the video cuts out, something blinks from inside it. Not an animal, not a bird, a human, eye bloodshot, crying sap, looking right at the camera. Delia died last year, in her sleep. Peaceful, they said. Her hands folded like she was holding someone else's. Her cabin still out there. Empty now. Windows boarded, porch sagging under, decades of rain and moss. But sometimes hikers say they see her, just a silhouette, standing at the tree line where the fog begins, wearing a red flannel, hair long and wild. Listening. They call her the Redwood Widow now. But folks who remember say that's a mistake. The real widow's still out there, still hungry. And when you walk too far into those ancient trees, past the broken branches, past the crushed helmets and half-sunk boots, if you listen close, you can hear the bark groan and whisper. And it says one thing over and over: come back, come back, come back. The thing about falling stars is, they don't burn up all at once, they sputter. They claw for gravity, they go out ugly. Just ask Bobby Lang. He used to be someone. Not a household name, not exactly. But for a hot streak in the early 90s, he was that guy. The tough-talking detective on Redline. The best friend in Lucky Dog. The sleazy lover in 3 made-for-TV thrillers your mom probably watched while folding laundry. His face meant something. Then it didn't. Hollywood does that. It chews the meat off your bones and asks what else you've got. By the time Bobby hit 53, the offers stopped coming. His jawline sagged. The phone calls slowed. He did one last con. In Reno, signing autographs at a nostalgia expo next to the guy who played the second Red Power Ranger. $200 for the weekend and a comped motel room. The bathroom light flickered the whole time. So when Bobby Lang climbed into his rust bucket Lexus that night and pulled onto Mulholland Drive, he wasn't looking for trouble, just a shortcut. A little ghost of the old days, taking the twisty route back through the hills like he used to when life felt golden and LA still smiled back. The radio was busted, so he drove in silence. Up there, Mulholland is a black ribbon, through the dark. One side is sheer drop-off, the other clawed rock and scrubby brush. You pass mansions tucked behind electric gates, and sometimes, only sometimes, you see figures in the dark. Hikers, drifters, shadows. It was around 11:40 p.m. when Bobby saw her. She was standing at the side of the road, not waving, not walking, just standing. A hitchhiker in a long black coat, arms limp at her sides, chin tilted ever so slightly. He swerved, startled. missed her by inches. The tires screamed on the asphalt, and the Lexus fishtailed to a stop. For a second, he couldn't breathe. Then he looked back. She was gone. No one there. No footsteps. No rustle of brush. Just the silent dark, the whip of wind off the canyon. He cursed, slapped the steering wheel, and told himself he imagined it. Trick of the eyes. A shadow. Hell, maybe a tree stump. He didn't see her again until 3 curves later. Same woman, same coat. Same dead stare. Standing in the middle of the road this time. He slammed the brakes. The Lexus jolted and skidded. Then, thump. Something hit the hood. The car bounced once and shuddered to a stop. He sat there panting, pulse screaming, in his ears. Then slowly, carefully, he opened the door. The road was empty, not a damn thing on it, not a smear, not a scrap of cloth, not even a dent in the grill. But the air was wrong. Thick. Still. Like the world had stopped breathing. He turned around. And there she was, sitting in the passenger seat, smiling. The kind of smile you only see in the dark parts of dreams. All teeth. Too wide, too still. Her skin was pale. Not white, but that bluish, sickly color you see in drowned things. Her hair was dripping wet. Her eyes were not eyes. They were pits. 2 deep sockets of writhing shadow, like holes in reality. And Bobby felt something looking out from inside them. He screamed, fell backward. The car door slammed shut on its own. The Lexus headlights flickered. The dash went dead. And then, slow as a dying clock, the woman turned her head toward him. Her mouth didn't move, but he heard it. "You're not on the list anymore, Bobby." The engine roared to life. The car peeled away on its own, tires screeching as it shot forward into the night. The red taillights flickered like eyes. Bobby ran. He doesn't know how far. A mile? 3? He ran until his lungs burned, until he collapsed in a ditch with his hands scraped and his knees bleeding. He spent the night under a dead tree, muttering, whispering lines from old scripts to keep himself sane. Cops found him in the morning. Babbling, dehydrated. They wrote it off as a psychotic break, midlife crisis, too many pills, not enough water. The Lexus was never found. But a week later, someone posted a video online, just 15 seconds long, dashcam footage, Mulholland Drive. The timestamp matched the night Bobby disappeared. You can hear music, something soft and classical, warped like it's playing underwater, and then she appears, the woman, standing in the road, arms limp, mouth smiling. As the car approaches, she melts. That's the only way to describe it. Like her body sloughs off her bones and seeps into the pavement. The smile stays, hovering in the dark like a lantern flame. The video ends. Went viral. Then it vanished. No one's been able to track the uploader, but the sightings continued. Actors mostly. Washed up ones. The desperate. The forgotten. People who used to be someone. They all say the same thing. You'll see her if you're hollow. You'll see her if your star has gone out. They call her the Mulholland Devil now, a shadow that walks the edge of fame and failure. A hitchhiker who feeds on regret, on broken dreams, on fading light. And if you stop, if you let her in, you might drive that road forever, the city lights always just out of reach, your name a fading echo in the rearview mirror, because Bobby Lang never came back. But sometimes, people say they see his face, behind the wheel of a car with no license plate, just driving, always driving, and sitting beside him. That smile, that endless smile, watching, waiting.